I don't spend a huge amount of time covering Shawn King. I don't necessarily have any negative feelings towards him. I don't have any positive feelings. I just kind of nothing him. A lot of people say he makes his living basically on the grift, and grifting black bodies that are basically killed or maligned by cops in horrible, undignified situations, and hopping around the country pursuing those unfortunate opportunities. I am even curious about what Shawn King does all day. I don't know if anybody ever thought about that. But beyond that point, Shawn King today did something that is coming across extremely patronizing to me and doesn't necessarily sit well with me, considering the larger context. This is Tamir Rice, or at the very least, the last few moments of Tamir Rice's life. I don't know if you remember this video, but I just want to refresh your memory. This is a 12-year-old child who's playing with a toy weapon. Notice the cop pulls up within a few seconds. I don't even know if he gets out the car. Murders the kid. Let's play the clip. He did get out the car. But basically, he got out the car and shot immediately. No appraising of the situation. There's somebody there. I am not going to care if they're a kid. I'm not going to care if that gun is real. I am just going to exert maximum justice to a 12-year-old. Murdered that kid. No consequences. Because this happened before George Floyd. This happened during the time where 1,000 cops kill people, or 1,000 people die a year from cop killings. And in that, 1% get held accountable. And of that 1% that's held accountable, only 30% go to jail. Those are the metrics to which Tamir Rice was subjected to. There is no justice in this process. Their family can't go somewhere to try to mind the scales. And by the way, if you put that officer in cop for the rest of his life, where you had bricks sitting on his chest, you can never match and change you can never match what she lost. There's no mending the scales. The only thing that the state or the state can do in this situation, if it's being earnest and honest, and it wants to keep down confusion, and it doesn't want to have people burning stuff down, then the state has to make it look like, or either by deed or by optics, that everyone is held under the same rule set, including those cops. And when you have 1,000 cops or 1,000 people die by cop violence every year, and 1% get held accountable, that gets across a stunning reality that they are not held accountable, that the social fabric is not built around this notion of justice, especially when it comes across to a cop. And I'm making a point that justice was never even possible in the first place, because you were never going to bring your kid back or give her something of equal value to that kid. None of those situations you could do that with. But in our case, they don't even try. It's not even the optics. It's people who've just lost a child and has to go on living, knowing that there were no consequences for her child's death. Basically, her black body that was produced by her had no value from the standpoint of the society. How could it have value if indeed society is perfectly okay to regard it this way? Clean murder. That cop killed him in a few seconds, and the consequences, especially in comparison to what just happened, are insignificant. Basically non-existent. Let's keep going. There's a little bit more to this. Because after they murder him, they let him bleed out. Let the 12-year-old child just bleed out. Again, the issue is of value. It comes across as if the society does not value his life. When people are saying Black Lives Matter, why do you think they're saying that? Do you think they're saying that from a position of strength? Or do you think they're saying that from the undignified spot of having to assert and let people know, the other races and everything else, that their lives have value? If that's an assumed premise, if that is an assumed premise by deed by look, by feel, by everything else, then that statement is never uttered. It would be taken as an assumption. No. They murdered that child in cold blood, and there was no consequences for that murder. Let's keep going. An officer tackles his sister as the sister runs over to Tamir, seeing that the officer had just murdered her brother. I'm going to stop it right here because this is pissing me off and it's making me angry. 12 years old. Child. Zero value. Zero. Meaning the society looked at that case and said clean murder. What is a parent to do? What is a family to do? What is a mother to do with that? Especially considering that there was no consequences for her child dying. Her child went out to play one day, minding his own business. Nobody is being harmed. Nobody is in danger. And yet, he could be murdered for sitting and playing while black, even when he's 12. And we've seen the case of sleeping while black. We've seen the case being shot to death, sleeping while black. We've seen cases where people were in their house and cops will shoot through the window in order to kill those people. And again, in many of these situations, the thing that gets across, weight, that each of us are in a shared societal fabric, that thing gets torn to shreds when the black life seems to not matter. What is his mom to think? What is his mom to think? I am not of mind to be one of those people that say, if I get killed by a cop because he shoot me in the back, to not burn shit down. Yes, you have my permission to burn shit down. That's where I am. In the situation where if that's my boy, I am not going to tell people to not burn shit down because I'm going to be angry and I'm going to be out there with them setting shit on fire. That's where I am, just to be bluntly honest. I don't have the turn the other cheek thing in the context of losing a life like this, nor do I think the turn the other cheek thing works in the context of losing a life. At a certain point, you just get ignored. And it's the thread of it all. It's the teeth of it that gives it, on some level, its value. There's always this call for peace because they don't necessarily like the situation being out of their control. It needs to be held within the confines of law for them to have control. And anything beyond that, well, they lose control. At that point, you need to bring in cops to beat the shit out of people. But they always tell people, hey, let's have peace, but they never deal with the real problem that causes this in the first place. They don't deal with inequality. They don't deal with the neighborhoods in disrepute. They don't deal with any of that. The maniac cops that are taught on some level to behave just like this. When Derek Chauvin put his knee on George Floyd's neck, do you think he was doing anything out of the ordinary? No. He could have been playing, he could have had a crossword book for all we care, for the amount of time that he put his knee on that man's throat. No, he thought he was doing business as usual. That level of callous, unempathetic view of humanity. You can't accept that that person is another human of equal value if you're putting your knee on his throat for 9 minutes. You can't accept that that child has equal value to your child when you're willing to put a bullet in him to his own death and let him bleed out within a few seconds of coming onto the scene. He was doing nothing wrong. You were belligerent. You were the maniac, and society says, clean murder. Clean murder. I guess I'm emphasizing this because whatever Tamir Rice's mom feels, I would argue is valid. I would argue is valid. If she's bitter, God bless her. She should be. If she's angry, God bless her. She should be. If she wants to burn shit down, God bless her. How could you not feel that way? Her child that she loved more than probably anything else on this planet was ripped away. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just so happy to be black. And he had to be a child. And he was holding on to a toy that cop didn't have sense enough to try to decide on whether or not it was a weapon at all. Yes, she should be pissed off. And so if she's writing certain tweets, if she's going after certain people, whether she gets it entirely right or not is almost secondary to her larger point in some of these things. And again, she has a right to be pissed off. Shawn King wrote an article. And in this article, Shawn King is basically patronizing her. And I don't know if he's writing this to defend the person who she's going after, or if he just injects himself into this because he wants to be seen. I don't know what Shawn King's motives are. I don't know if he wants to try to say, hey, her pain should be understood and it makes it okay. That's even worse. She doesn't need you to quantify or justify her pain. Her pain is what it is. And everybody who looks at that case with an honest view can understand why she is hurting, why she is burning. And that shit would have stayed with me for the rest of my life. And I would have been, it's hard to reconcile that. And even further, that the life didn't apparently matter, at least not from the standpoint of the state. Shawn King writes this letter, or writes this document. This document is him basically going through, showing some of the mistakes that she's making as she's talking about Tamika, what is the last name? Tamika Mallory. And Shawn King is giving this kind of defense for Tamika Mallory in this. So right here, on March 7th, after hearing an organization called Black Lives Matter Global had raised $90 million last year, she posted this. To be clear, Tamika Mallory has nothing to do with the organization. BLM Global Network, why didn't you do right by the families or movement? Y'all some dirty bitches, pitiful and pathetic. Y'all looking like fools. No good is going to come to y'all. One of the things that was also brought up is about the way she was writing these, the language, or the way she was cutting the language, whether or not that was just kind of the way she talked, or whether it was just the way she talked on Twitter. I got to be honest, I don't care. I don't entirely care how this comes out, especially in the context of Twitter. And it's grotesquely unfair to Tamika Mallory, or to Mallory. Yeah, Tamika Mallory. But I can't believe you wrote this document. I get you want to defend her. Fair enough. But this, you're highlighting one tweet after the next that she wrote, where she was pissed off and angry at the Black Lives Matter thing. And it's possible that she's getting it wrong, believing that Mallory is somehow associated with these things. Fair enough. By the same token, is this really what you want to spend your time on? Meaning, while I accept the problems associated with Mallory, and I accept that you may want to correct her on this, this looks bad. It comes across as being patronizing, because you're stuck in this thing of not wanting to seem like an asshole for somebody who had their son murdered by cops. And so instead, you just come across as patronizing, trying to justify the tweets, trying to justify her pain, as if she needs you to do that. She does not. You would have been better off pointing out, hey, she's getting this somewhat wrong, or maybe sending a letter to her directly on this front. This document rubs me the wrong way. Honest to God, it does. He's showing like one tweet after the next. Here's another one. I'm tired of you Black Lives Matter, Tamika Mallory and crew bitches that's riding these black families, ambulance chasing attorneys, being Trump, Lee Merrick. To y'all, have fucked up our fight, and y'all can kiss my ass too. Make me see more. I'm not sugarcoating nothing. Floyd and Taylor deaths less than a year. Less than a year. Cases solved? I think not. Them fuck boy attorneys and activists that don't mean the families no good, no agendas. Now, say for the moment, your kid got murdered by a cop, and you didn't see anything come of that from the standpoint of consequences being dished out. And you have activists and attorneys that are contacting you, that are talking to you, that are trying to get you to do this or trying to get you to do that. And in this very specific case, it comes to not, at least not in a way that could balance the scales in any real way. And that cop who did it walked. What do you think? will you be wrong to think that some of these people are ambulance chasers, the Crumps of the world, that always end up representing these very specific families, kind of like the Al Sharpton for a modern day? Or, for that matter, the activists that are continuously pushing these guys with the notion of potentially getting something out of working with them. Yeah, she may take somewhat of a dark tint on those things. She may become cynical because her kid got fucking killed and there were no consequences for it. When she's looking at the lawyers, she's looking at the activists. She may have feelings that she believes that these guys are not living up and using her kid or all these deaths as props. I make the same allegation, by the way, about the political class using these kids as props, the people who are shot in the back as props, without really ever doing anything real to substantially change that scenario. But Shawn King is showing all of this seemingly with the point of protecting Tamika Mallory. Here's another one. Now, this has to do with the Grammys. Now, apparently, Tamika Mallory performed at the Grammys, and Rice responds, "Look at this clout chaser. Did she lose something in the fight? I don't think so. That's the problem. They take us for a joke, and that's why we never have justice because of shit like this." Now, I'm going to show you the clip. And basically, Tamika Mallory is giving a Grammy performance where she's giving this kind of spoken word piece. Now, she clearly believes that Mallory is grifting. And in the context of Mallory grifting, she's going after her on Twitter on some level. I'm pretty sure she probably goes after a lot of people. But in this very specific case, Mallory, because her point is, and let's say for the moment whether she's right or wrong about Mallory, that the organizations, the activists, the lawyers, all of these people are basically just in for the dollars and nothing in the context of trying to change any of it. Meaning my kid died. Nobody went to jail for it. And the laws weren't even changed for it. Nothing changed. Nobody cared. And these activists and everything else that are coming out here, they're basically living off of the death and the misery of the various people who are losing loved ones by killing of cops. By the cops killing those people. Again, 1,000 killings a year, only 1% is prosecuted. In that very specific context, those people get a lot of business from the number of people that are killed by cops. And if the laws and the rules and everything else was changed where the cops weren't killing people like that, do those people keep their jobs? Looking at it from that point of view, yes, you could see and you can come to the conclusion that this is one big grift. Is she wrong? Even if she gets Mallory wrong on this one very specific point from the standpoint of BLM, is she wrong in the larger context? And so Shawn King closes, or getting to the end, he says he made the point about saying he knew Tamika Mallory, and he said when he saw this, it broke his heart. He says, quote, man, I'll just let you see it. But mostly, my heart just breaks for Tamir Rice, whose pain, anger, grief, fury we must try to understand. But over the past 10 years, I'm so sad to say that I've worked with hundreds of black mothers whose sons were murdered by American police. And I've walked with those mothers through many stages of grief, including frustration and disillusionment, where many of them ultimately find themselves. There, they struggle to trust anyone because they've been failed by everyone. And at the end, he ends it with, ultimately, what I know is that a grieving mother like Tamir Rice has every right to be skeptical and hurt and suspicious and cynical. She wasn't born this way, but the evil and unrelenting racist country forced her into that corner. It is our job to gracefully and patiently help her find her way out, because that's what she needs to do. She needs to find her way out of that corner. Introducing that you're walking with all of these black mothers, I guess is to show credibility. It seems that this document was done in order to protect Tamika Mallory. But you were stuck with the problem of how do I protect her without coming across as if I'm attacking Tamir Rice. And it seems that the device that you end up using was just blunt patronism. Blunt Patronism. It's dripping throughout this entire page. I get you want to protect Tamika. Fair enough. Do whatever you got to do to protect Tamika. But this is a bullshit piece. And you're listing all of these things that she said over the course of her time. If you accept that she's a mom that's basically hurting for a kid, you don't write this document. If you're trying to grift and introduce yourself into something, you definitely write that document. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks all.